So thanks for having me. This is National Media Literacy Week.
Have you been that way?
Yeah.
How did you not mention that already? Get on my soapbox here. So Warren asked me to talk about what does modern media literacy need to look like in a world with fake news and an endless sea of information. And I think he also pointed out that it's election day, or at least a year since the last election. Do you remember where you were? I want you to think back to one of the biggest events of 2015 involving the White House, the then President, and as you can see from that stock ticker, the precipitous crash in the stock markets, which immediately followed. It was this. As reported by the AP, 2 explosions in the White House. And I think we'll remember Barack Obama was injured. We don't remember that because it didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is that this was just the AP, this is the AP's Twitter feed, but it was hacked. So this brings me to Ernest Hemingway. He said in an interview in the Atlantic, every man should have a built-in crap detector. And from that, some academics emerged a media literacy test, the crap test, looking for currency, reliability, authority, and purpose or point of view, which is mostly held up as a good way to look at any piece of media and to give students a sense of what it is they're looking at. But if we go back to that AP test, the AP, and apply the crap test, was it current? Yes, it was. Was it reliable? It's the Associated Press, this was their feed. Was it speaking with authority? Yeah, nice and clear. And purpose, point of view, it was communicating news. So it would have passed the crap test, except it was false. So we need to go beyond and think what modern media literacy needs to take into account, because some of the old metrics that we use and still see value in don't hold up against all of the different kinds of media and the different kinds of technology that we're dealing with. So let's think about how we live today. Here's a familiar scene. Wait, that's the stock photography version of how we live today. This is how we actually live today. We've got our individual screens. We're in our own bubbles. We're in our own echo chambers. Mom can't see what's on the kid's screen. Dad's doing something else. TV's on in the background, at least dog's watching them. So we need to recognize how we consume media and be realistic about it. And we need to recognize this was something else that came up on the panel yesterday that I chose not to disagree with because I knew I'd have a microphone today. Look at these kids, they're using the same stuff as we are. And then we move on. But the kids don't use the same stuff that we do in the same way that we do. So we need to recognize our own understanding of media tools is not necessarily the same as our kids. So take these two, Microsoft Office and postage stamps. I've got a 17-year-old and she's running her MacBook Pro. I was asking something about Microsoft Office. She said, what's that? And I've spent my entire working life in and out of some version of Word and Excel. She had no idea what that was. She lives on the cloud. Her school work is on the cloud. She hands in her homework on Post-it.com or something. All her social life is on the cloud. So she's using her computer and creating content. She doesn't use the same tools as us. My other kid, who's older, didn't realize you have to pay for postage stamps. Like every other message she sends for free. Why is that any different? just because we have all these things around us doesn't mean that people see them the same way. So you have to, and maybe this goes back to all of the child development stuff, you just got to think like a kid, but you have to think like a contemporary kid because they see the world differently. But also just because they're using something doesn't mean they necessarily understand it. So the overages on my phone bill attest to how much my 17-year-old is using Snapchat. It cost me another $30 this month as she ran us way over on our limits. But Snapchat caught her out a week or two ago. She'd fallen out with a friend, close friend, so they were still in the same Snapchat squad, group. And she gets a text at 1 in the morning saying, it's all over, like 3 strikes you're out with this friendship. And it's because the Snapchat geolocation filter that they added meant that everyone who you were friends with could see where you were at any given time. And this kid could see that my daughter was out with all her friends and she wasn't. It was giving her a geo alert of where everyone else was. Now you can manage these settings, but you have to know they exist to do that. We did something similar on the Humble Media Genius project around photography. Again, based on this, I had an example where my kid was 13 and a friend of hers had posted on Instagram a fairly alluring picture of herself, like deliberately so, made her look older, and she had all of her Instagram settings were public and open, and she'd written, "I'm home," and then it was also geotagged, and so there was a drop-in of this 13-year-old girl saying, "I'm home," and a little drop-in saying exactly the street address. Her mum freaked out when I called her. Mum worked for a tech company, didn't even know this thing was even happening. So the way we addressed that when we put together the Media Genius project,
It's not just a picture up there.
yeah, it's a video, it's just about it. This is a clip from our animation on photography.
Photos and you. Today we're talking about photos. Many of you take pictures with your phones and music players. Now pictures are a great way to share memories of friends, like Blossom and me. Here, I'll show you. Ah, Chet, my tiny photographer friend. I see you're taking pictures of your food and posting them to your photo feed. I got it. You know, everyone who sees those pictures is gonna get really hungry. Chad, did you know that when you share a photo, information included with the picture might show your exact location? In other words, I think you have guests. You should probably switch your photo sharing settings to private.
Good.
So that's how we took that. So that was literally how we took that example of that girl and made it so that we're still encouraging kids to take pictures and share photos. I'm a big believer in that. I've built 4 apps now that where kids are taking photographs and sharing them, but you need to explain the boundaries in which they work.
So when you do the photo sharing, do you have to anonymize their data?
We don't, for the stuff that we make, we don't collect that because you have to kind of, when you're building an app, you're turning a lot of stuff on. If you're building it natively, so we could actively have collected it, but we don't. But I can explain how we work within Kobo because we actually have kids sending us photographs which we review and publish. So if you go to the Plum Landing website, you'll see photographs on the homepage that I approved this morning that come through a review database. And if they sit on our server and we not review them, then they're deleted because we're not allowed to have them without parental permission. So we've got ways to work at scale within COPA and still allow kids to share as long as they're not sharing their personal information. I unplugged Alexa here because I just wanted to show you whatever we're doing with technology, we're always going to find fails and we're always going to get caught out because we're always one step behind. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. Does this look familiar? Does this kid look familiar? All right. Is the microphone still there for the?
Yes. Oh, actually, I just turned it.
So, and you can find this on YouTube.
You want to hear a station for porn detecting porno regions, watching amateur girl party sex. No! Dildo regions.
Alexa, stop!
So,
Whoops. That just made the whole trip worthwhile.
so there's always going to be pitfalls. So another big kind of impact on the way we consume media is how much we share it. And that also goes to a lot of the kind of conversations around fake news that have been happening in the past year. But I want to take a step back in time. So here's my favorite example of how quickly ideas can be shared. This is from 1998. Long before we got used to talking about memes, and obviously before a lot of the social media became very widely adopted. This is when John Glenn went back into space. This next message flew around the world in email. And it was just an email that people found and they forwarded. And if that resonates for anyone, it certainly did for me. I just thought it was the funniest thing. The way it works these days is that obviously people share and forward stories, and I picked up, these are all screenshots from headlines. One of the analyses that seemed to be commonly held was that we didn't know when we were sharing fake news over the course of the past year. And I don't think that's the case. I think if we look at these two, on the left, Donald Trump quoted in People magazine, "If I were to run, I'd run as a Republican. They're the dumbest group of voters in the country." And that was widely shared by Democrats. And similarly, the Pope endorsing Donald Trump was widely shared by Republicans. I don't know if people forwarding that to their friends believe those to be the case. Pizzagate is a more recent example. Towards the end of the campaign, where people were obviously sharing this idea that there was a pedophile ring being run under Hillary Clinton's auspices out of a pizza shop that was funded by Democrats. I think people were sharing because it either reinforced what they wanted to believe, or they thought it would simply undermine the opposition, or they thought it was funny. I don't think people were necessarily fooled. Some people may have been, but it's not enough to say, oh, we were so distracted and we accidentally shared things. I think we need to dig more into why we share things and recognize how easy and quick it is to do that. And that's going to be true for kids as well as for us as adults. And I think we just need to go to the words of Abraham Lincoln. I'm also quoting my sources here. This is Abraham Lincoln. So I'll give you a different example of what it means to be sharing. There's some value in it, but there's still a media literacy moment because you have to understand what it is we're sharing. So if we look at this, the world's largest dump, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Have we heard about this? Generally not. So it's quoted as being twice the size of France. And you know, when we hear about it, we picture this. And if we search for it, we literally picture this. You can see these thumbnails and images coming up on all of those searches. If we remember our geography, the Pacific is not where this picture was taken. It was taken off the coast of Africa, but it doesn't matter for the story. The Pacific Garbage Patch is almost unphotographable. It's micro elements of decayed plastic, so it does exist. It is a major problem. It's more of a problem than trash in the ocean because it's in the food chain. But it's been useful for environmentalists to have people have that image. So even though it's fake, it represents an idea that's easier to convey with a fake image than it is to convey with a real one. Yes?
I just thought it was interesting when you showed the Google search that every photograph was the same photograph, but it was just in different sizes. See, all the photographs were the same when you do that search.
Yeah, I did a reverse search against the image to find where that image was being represented. Because even though it was an unrelated picture, it's being used by a lot of people because people, as we do when we're making our presentations, we go to Google Images, we find something that looks kind of like the story I'm trying to tell, I'm going to use it. That's not how a journalist would work, but that's how most media seems to be pulled together most of the time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I never heard of a reverse search before.
Yeah, if you have a picture of, you take a picture of something, you can take a picture of this, and you go to Google Images, you upload, it'll take a picture of that, and it'll tell you what it is.
You say journalists wouldn't do it, but I think that's the Guardian.
Some journalists might. People actually went to the extremes of saying, well, if this trash island was a real place, it needs a real currency and it needs a passport. So they've actually created currency. You've got 20 degrees. It's the trash islands, and Al Gore's the first person to hold a passport for it. But again, that's a kind of an ironic way of drawing attention to the same thing. We're all trying to find images to convey ideas, either through humor or through just appropriation. Something that's more traditional and hasn't really changed, but the way things work and the media mean we have to keep adapting. So one of the things that you look for in media literacy and always have done is about editorial bias. So I got a call from my mechanic a couple of weeks ago. My engine warning light had come on and I needed him to take a look at it. And he called me back and said, I fixed the engine warning light. It was an issue in the fuel system, the ventilation you need, an $8 fuel cap. Great. He said, you also need a $1,500 catalytic converter. I said, okay. I said, I can see why you led with the story of the fuel cap. People will always bury the lead if they have a reason to. So, trying to keep out of politics a little bit, I thought I would just take a look and see how two regional tabloid newspapers covered the same news event on the same day. This was the Deflategate story around a sport that you guys think is football. but isn't it football? But it's Tom Brady. Can you tell which was the New York magazine reporting on an NFL fine for Tom Brady, and which was the Boston magazine? So was it ball busted, or how stupid the NFL is? And unsurprisingly, it's the New York Post versus the Boston Herald. And the reason for that is neither of these magazines would sell if the thing was reversed. If New York was saying poor Tom Brady, and if Boston Herald was saying, of course, he deserved it for cheating. So we expect from our media the things that reinforce the ideas that we want to believe, and that works at a regional level, national level, political level, and that's something that we need to tell our kids. I actually ran a new service for PBS Kids based on photography with the Associated Press photo library, and I ran that for a couple of years. And we made an effort to show kids beautiful pictures from around the world, as well as trying to convey real news. And we did cover tragedy. This was Haiti earthquake. But I'll be honest, there's so much going on today. I don't know if we could keep that going for young kids. And I didn't even update my deck from last week's tragedy to yesterday's tragedy. It's just relentless, and that's one of the challenges on this conversation around fake news is it's the real news is the stuff that we worry about. Our kids saying, I think someone made that comment yesterday about turning off devices, and I don't know the answer to that, because you want to raise kids with some sense of reality. My kids' high school had an active shooter training. I don't have an answer for it. It's depressing and clearly relentless. I'm going to step through a few other kind of quick elements of media literacy, again, that we need to think about from a contemporary point of view. So if we think about data and metadata, and there was a question about whether, from Robin, about whether we, how much data is sent with photographs. Everything we do leaves a trail. This is us, we're constantly surrounding ourselves in the dust of all the data that we give to other people that they can dissect if they choose to. I heard a conversation with an NPR reporter who handed his phone records across when the whole Snowden thing came out and they were trying to explain metadata. He said, well, what can you tell from my phone records without listening to my phone calls? He said, well, okay, well, show me your phone bill. And so they looked at all the phone numbers, and they said, I think these people with these phone numbers are your buddies. Are they like sports buddies? Do you do something with these people with these numbers? And he said, yeah, those are my friends. And they could tell because it was clustered around the weekend, and it looked like there were weekend plans being made. And so he made a correct assumption, this analyst made a correct assumption that those numbers were this guy's buddies. And he said, well, what about this number? I think that's probably your teenager. He said, well, how do you know that? I said, well, for every 5 calls that you make, you get 1 back. So it's just reading the tea leaves, and that's without knowing what was in the phone call, or even just looking up and see whose phone number's in the phone book, if they still make phone books. So we give out a lot of information about ourselves one way or another. So another thing that we need to be all aware of, scams. So here, and if anyone's seen this is the kind of stuff that you might get used to seeing in your email. This is actually a screenshot of what John Podesta got and clicked on, and then unleashed 20,000 pages of emails that went to WikiLeaks and arguably skewered Hillary at the last election. It looks pretty authentic. Once you get into it, he was like retyping his password, and that gave whoever wanted access to all of his accounts. very plausible. We get these things all the time now. If you think about how vigilant you have to be, pretty tricky. Going back to the original crap test, the A in crap was authority. And as we see headlines like this, it used to be that you tell kids that if you need to look something up, go to a .gov website to confirm it. And we might now need to question where that authority still lies. Hence headlines like this from The Onion. If you were wondering, by the way, what's being signed there, it was actually this.
Didn't know that.
November 7th.
And worth keeping in mind, the stats about where kids get their news from. Far and away, they get their news from us as parents. That's what the column on the left is showing, family. More children trust news from family than any other source. News is a human endeavor for kids. So all of these things about where we consume our news and how we're sharing it and whether we recognize we're in our echo chambers they get it from us. I'll end with where we often start at Time Online at Google. And I should note I like them not because they're a great search tool, but also they're one of my funders. But you guys all must have been pretty jealous on October 28th when the whole Google homepage was wishing me a happy birthday. You probably all noticed that and wondered how did Bill Shribman have a special birthday thing? It turns out it was just for me. And that's a thing that we kind of know, but we don't really know the extent of, is what level everything we're being fed is being customized to us. So that autocorrect, or the auto suggest from Apple is true. If you want to type is Donald Trump into Google without hitting return, if you try it now, or if you want to choose Barack Obama or anyone else, my one this morning is Donald Trump offered me dead, married, left-handed, a draft dodger in Home Alone 2, which I think he is. 45th president. Is he German? Is he taking a salary? Is he helping Puerto Rico? At any given time, there's about 150 of these, but depending on who you are and what your recent searches are and which country you're looking in, you'll get something different. Another way to look at that, and I'm happy to walk people through it, we did this over dinner last night, is seeing what Facebook thinks you are. And I say what it thinks you are because it's building categories based on yours. So it decided, we went through Jason and Barbara, I went through our Facebook, and it's pretty buried. You click all the way into your ad preferences and it tells you what categories it believes you belong to. And even though I don't believe I've ever made a political post or liked a political post, because where I work, we're a news agency as well and tend to frown on that, it still marked me as very liberal, and it marked me as an immigrant because I'm an expat. And it try to guess my age, although I've marked on Facebook that I'm 100 years old. And it knew what kids I had, and so on. And you can see about 20 different categories or more. You can delete all of those, but then you've got to know where to look to find them, and I'd be happy to show people how to find them. And it's, every one of these companies is building up a profile of you, and they're often buying data from other people, so that the value, the frequent flyer cards that you have at like CVS, that's all of the stuff that you've bought, your prescription stuff, and your birth control, whatever it is, people are buying that information too. So the media that we use is just one aspect of all of the technology we're giving all this information out to, and we're commodities to that extent. Data is sold. Essentially, if you're using something for free, then you're the product. Whether that's Facebook, whether that's Google, whether that's YouTube. Anyway, I'll end there. I know we're trying to make up time, and I thank you for your